Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GoldFish Report. I'm your host, Louisa, and today is January 17th, 2018, and we have a very special returning guest, a friend of the GoldFish Reports, which you all know, and Victory of the Light uh, radio show host, thepromiserevealed.com, and we're going to welcome back Rob Potter to the GoldFish Report. How are you, Rob?
I'm wonderful, Louisa. Thank you so much for having me.
And of course, I have with me a friend of the GoldFish Report and co-hosting with me today, Winston Trout. Welcome, Winston, and thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I'm just here to make sure you stay on the straight course.
No meandering, no meandering.
No meandering.
You, Winston. Thanks for being here. This is interesting because, you know, Rob and Winston also know each other, so this is going to be a very nice conversation. And Rob's going to be talking today about quite a few things, and one of the reasons that we wanted to do this report today was because he wanted to present part 2 of this Bolivian trip that he had gone on, and also there's updates with Lewis and some information that's coming through for 2018, so we'll want to hear about that. Also, Rob has some updates from his Venusian contacts, which many of you know that Rob has been in contact with. He's a contactee, and you know that he has been in contact with Venusians for quite some time. Yes, from Venus. And of course, we're going to also talk about Rob's Mount Shasta conference this summer, July 27th to the 29th, and we'll get all that information. I'm sure Rob will bring us that. As you know, Rob's also one of the founding members of the Prepare for Change I would say movement that started with Cobra, and I think you have some updates to share with us. So why don't you get started, Rob? And it's good to see you. Thanks for being here. And what have you got for us today?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you for coming on. I think you look beautiful today, Louisa. And ladies and gentlemen, again, I've said this before, and I really would like you to hit the donation button for Louisa. She is a tigress for the light. She works very hard every day, and she has dedicated a lot of her own time towards this report that gives you guys a lot of information. And a lot of us are working, everyone's working for free. I fortunately have some healing items on my website that I can make a little bit of a living from, but I'd like you to support the GoldFish Report and Louisa as much as possible. And I'd like to thank Winston for coming on, an old friend of mine who contacted me, I think in 2014, said we need to talk. We ended up meeting in Ashland, Oregon, above Mount Shasta here. We talked for 4 hours, freezing out there, but Winston is, I have to say, a forensic PhD, doctorate, master's degree in understanding finances that his knowledge, I sometimes just go crazy with the amount of knowledge he has. And I think that he should be one of the people to help set up one of the new financial systems. So it's an honor to be here with you again. Winston was one of my presenters in 2015 at my second Mount Shasta conference event, and I just invited him up to my new one here. So I guess we can start with the part 2 of the Bolivia trip, which has taken me forever to write. I've been very busy doing some other things here, but last year my report ended and we barely left we're just going to Lake Titicaca there, but one of the things I found out there from Lewis at the on our journey there was that the golden disk of the sun is actually a universal, I will say, tool of the cosmic ultradimensionals. He told me that every planet has a golden disk of the sun, and the golden disk of the sun is depicted in all of our historical, our ancient site records as a sun with wings. So the history of the golden disk of the sun, I guess, goes back millions and millions of years, but it's placed on a planet, and the ultradimensionals and what they call the colob, or the central sun of the Pleiades, and the administration from the higher dimensions down place a golden disc on the sun as kind of like part of a neural network of communication with all life streams on the planet, and probably works with the ensouling angel of the planet, which we would call the Ancient of the Days, or Sunat Kumara. I mean, there's different stories about the beings that are in charge now, but that golden disk of the sun acts as a neural transducer where they can monitor the life streams. So I'll give you a brief history, and then you can maybe ask questions if you want. But from Louis' understanding, and he goes, he said, well, the sites that we were visiting down there were 70,000 years old, he said, some of these giant stones down there. And I can't even remember how to pronounce some of the names of these sites, but he said the golden disk of the sun was originally in Lemuria, which was 70,000 years ago, and he said 77. I said, what's a couple thousand years between friends? But so the golden disk of the sun resided in Lemuria, where it was on the surface of the planet, and able to be seen, and all the people understood and knew its purpose, and it acted as a vibrational uplift for meditation, and emanated radiations of spiritual nature, which helped people balance themselves. And at some point, I think he said it was about after Lemuria, and I don't know the exact timing, but it was moved to Atlantis. And then what happened, he said that it was being used or abused by the priesthoods that were utilizing those energies. And actually Noah was one of the patriarchs that was not abusing it, but they were misusing it, and the good guys knew that there was an imminent collapse of the polar fields due to the abuse of this, and that it would cause a pole shift. There was actually warnings from the cosmic hierarchy and the spiritual beings that this was going to take place, and they were telling not only Noah but several others to build arks or genetic repositories of life on the surface, because it was intended, because of the abuse of genetic manipulations by I don't know, I don't want to call them reptilians or whatever, but let's call them unbalanced scientists that were getting out there. So it was decided to allow for the flooding of the planet during the pole shift, and certain beings were lifted off the planet, and many of them went underground. On most worlds, most of the life is on the interior of the planet. On our world, we've had a lot of life on the surface, but at the Atlantean times, they went underground. And then when Atlantis was destroyed, it was moved to Egypt. And I'll have some pictures in the report that you can all check out. It's going to be on Promise Revealed, and Louise will have a link to that when this report comes out. And you'll be able to see obelisks in the museums in Egypt of the winged disk sun. So anytime you see that, that's representative of the golden disk of the sun. So then it was moved to Egypt, where it again resided on the surface of the planet, and people were able to see it for a while. And again, it had to be moved due to the unbalanced nature of certain elements within the priesthood that had began to use the power for unholy means. And about 9,500 years ago, it was moved to Bolivia, where it was on the surface of the planet. And then approximately 4,500 years ago, the galactic forces and what we call the interior government decided to open a hole underneath one of the mountains to let the water fill in, and they rediverted a river to cover all these ancient sites and what's called Lake Titicaca the Minor. So at that point in time, from that point in time, the golden disk of the sun has resided under an energetic dome. Louis went up from underneath the ground by being invited into the interior government, and saw the golden disk of the sun, and he has reports on that. So that's kind of the history, a little bit bullet point of the golden disk of the sun, and it acts as now the primary focus of the feminine vortex on the planet, which was shifted from the Himalayas, the masculine vortex, to now the feminine vortex, and they call it the new Shambhala.
Okay. Winston, I just wanted to ask you if you had any questions for Rob before I say anything.
Not yet.
Okay. Rob, can you just explain for the viewers, did Lewis give you any like, did he describe what this looked like? You said he saw it. Was there any engravings or inscriptions on it? Can you describe that so we can get like a visual image of what this really represents?
The visual image is that in this area where there's an energetic dome, and when he went up and climbed up into the area, there's like a hill. And actually, you see it Stonehenge, except it's all intact. It's that same circular pillar type shape where the golden disc was hovering above that, and in meditation, levitating around the disc were male and female masters of the Great White Brotherhood, the extension in South America, and it looked pretty much like a spaceship. And they gave him permission to create a jewelry type piece of this, and they put a stone on it for him that actually transduces the sun energy. The sun is very important in vibrational attunement for the higher self and our spiritual light bodies. We're living flames. We are literally living flames of the Word of God. I can talk about a little bit about that later.
But was it gold? Was it made out of gold? And did it have any inscription on it at all, or was he able to see that?
I don't know about inscription. He didn't say so. But the master, Soramez, who had invited him, and I believe they had two inner earth beings come and guide him to the actual entrance, which is somewhere, and he went down a long staircase, and then one of the ET masters, I think Soramel, who is a Venusian that he knows, and I don't want to mix these up because he's got a lot of masters and guides that he speaks to physically, but I think guided him, and they went on a train, and he met the master Soramez, who is the regent for this area of the earth. They have divided the inner earth complex of the Atlantean civilizations that have each got about their own spiritual development of a very high order. And he said most of them are pretty much etheric beings. They're physical, but they're etheric. And this particular group guards the golden disk of the sun from misuse. And the master Soramez he said, 4,500 years old. And he said his lifespan has been extended because he has a specific purpose. But the earth is divided into 12 sections, and these are kind of guarded by 12 masters that kind of oversee these regions and around the earth. And there's different ones in different areas. And in one of his journeys to a different place, he met all 12 of them. That's another experience. But when he went up there, the master said, he says, I want you to touch the disc. And as soon as he said that, he just thought about it. And at that moment, he had a tremendous, overwhelming feeling of unity and love and of cosmic consciousness. He said that many questions arose in his mind, but in his heart, he felt the great wisdom and the benevolence of the masters, that those questions would be fulfilled in time, and that he should just be patient and wait. He also had stated that he felt like a child, their kindness and the humility that they presented.
Oh, that's nice. We should all be going back to that, right, Winston? Child at heart. I'm a kid at heart. Hey, look at this, Rob. I'll even show you. Check this out. Check this out. I'm going to just show you real quick, just so everybody, I want to inspire everybody to be a child at heart. Look at that. How do you like that?
All right. Did
you
Yoda
like
give
that?
it to you?
Yoda, yeah. Yeah, he's my guide. He's my spiritual guide. Yeah, that's how cool is that? That is really cool. That is my. So we all have to stay. We all have to stay young at heart, right? Gotta have the toys. So go ahead. Sorry.
Let's see. So he, one of the things he said when he was up there, he looked over and he saw another thing underneath the lake not so far away. And they said, yes, that's the Confederation. And Louis he's very heartfelt. He's not political, doesn't get into any of the negative stuff. He says, he calls them the guides of the sky and the masters. And he said the difference is the masters make things happen. They control the weather, and when they say something's going to happen, it happens, and they can make way on the earthly plane for things to happen. So he said he saw a thing, and they said, well, whenever there's one of the underground Great White Brotherhood or Order of the Star or one of these interior spiritual governments, there's always a Confederation base nearby. They work in concert. And he's had many other experiences. So on this journey, the first place we went to was his land, and they had told him that rock over there, pull that out of the ground and set that up. It actually used to be an ancient contact point of the Great White Brotherhood. So they told him to gather people to go on these journeys to these preferred contact points where the Great White Brotherhood had contacted the surface population in the past. In fact, the Incan civilization and the whole complex of sacred sites in Peru were helped to be created by these two beings that came out from beneath Lake Titicaca thousands of years ago, a couple thousand years ago, and they went to Peru by foot and contacted the various Incan tribes and united them and taught them agriculture. They taught them road building, and they became excellent road builders and built Machu Picchu and all of these sacred sites of initiation and spiritual learning. And they took several of these priests back to the island of the moon, the women, and the island of the sun. And these were monasteries where what he called the conscious management of energy and connection to nature was taught. So these shamans were actually developed by the teachers of the Great White Brotherhood, just like the ancient mystery schools of Egypt. So there's an interior government going on, just as there is, we can talk about the Brusidi Mountains as well. The interior, the interior Gartha network is now making outreaches to individuals around the planet, like Louis, and preparing people for informational exchange. There will be records and so forth being bought out shortly. Let me go real quick to the end of the trip in Machu Picchu. He receives telepathic communication usually for each group that goes with, and they gave some information there. And one of the information things that they shared was that there will be increased contact. From 2018, there's going to be something, they said this is a very important year, a lot of changes. And from now to 2025, we'll see increased contact unto permanent contact. In other words, open exchange where probably many of them will be coming on the surface and many of them would be here secretly, and then they'll move forward into direct communication and downloads. They'll be giving information to different individuals to be sharing with the world in the terms of ancient records that will come out and basically put the bad guys out of business through technology. And we all know oil, fracking, it's dead, it's over, folks. When you think about you're sitting in cars and you got your own little car, in the in the way of the thinking of the extraterrestrials, like the Venusians, it's kind of like a hive mind. The feminine, they have a queen bee, so to speak, and it's a matriarchal society, and they all work together in harmony. So if you can imagine the Iargian system of technology that they have on the planet Iarga, where they have these giant magnetic long-range trains with they've got 12 giant poles of super magnetic trains like we have in the government underground. These are open for the public. And on the interior is all the commerce and transport and support and food and all this. And then outwards, you get into, middle range, middle, and then short range stops. And you just rent a vehicle, and it takes you up on the thing. It puts you up, and you take a group of car, and you go to Europe. It takes you, 5 minutes or longer if you want to go leisurely, and you arrive at a destination. And it's all on a exact arranged, engineered system where the car lets off and gravity just takes it down and it parks. So none of this gas, none of this sitting in traffic. It's just madness what we do here, and it's due to lack of communication and understanding of technology. So all those things are going. People don't worry so much about what's happening. What we have coming up here is our time to create alternative solutions. And I had mentioned earlier, I think, we need a new financial system. And I think minds like Winston and other intelligent people can come forth with a honest, just, and transparent system that can serve us well. So we hear from the guy named Jared Rand. Have you heard about him?
Yeah.
Okay, so you probably interviewed him, did you?
No, I didn't interview him.
Anyway, this guy speaks with tremendous amount of confidence about what's going on, and I know he believes everything that he's saying. He talks about the med beds and all this stuff, and I'm sure that technology probably does exist. How quickly it will come out, I don't know. He believes in the financial reset, and that all these people who in there, they talk a lot about the money, and I know that there's lots of people working on that. I know that there's plans and that it hopefully will come through. I'm not exactly sure if it will come about that way. Ben Fulford has recently stated that there will be an EMP or a shutdown, and I'm not sure it's EMP. The ETs will take over, I believe, in accordance with the Ascended Masters at the right time to ensure the takedown of the current financial system and to re-influence something new. I don't want to speculate on that, but there's Saint Germain Trust is real. Saint Germain is real. I actually did I ever share with you the Saint Germain story I had?
I'm not sure what it is. Sorry.
Well, here, when I was in 1979, I was working with Fred Bell at the National Health Federation, which later became the Whole Life Expo, which became the Whole Earth Expo, which now is the Conscious Life Expo. And it was kind of a new age hodgepodge. We have Victoris Kavinskis, David Karmos, Pablo Areola, Bernard Jensen, Pat Flanagan, Fred Bell, and a host, Michio Kushi and Walter Ohashi. It was like a new age thing like it was, but this is in the 70s. And you'd go down the aisles and everyone's giving free samples, and you know how wild it is. You're meeting light workers and all this wonderful stuff. And there was this booth on the corner. It was Elizabeth Clare Prophet. And I went up there, and there was one guy in the booth, and they had a VCR or VHS, I think was then the first thing. And I was looking at this thing, and I just sat down and I watched this. It was a cave. It was a picture well lighted in this cave. And this guy was talking, and the pillars were hewn out of rock. And there were a bunch of, you saw the front row of chairs, and a second row, there were some heads looking. And it was kind of weird. It was kind of like lights, just two lights in there. And all you could see was a stage, a guy talking, and there was a guy sitting there. And they get, the guy gave a kind of a good speech. He said, now we're going to hear from our brother, Archangel Raphael, through Thomas, or whatever the guy's name was. And the guy was sitting there. He had his hands up, and his head dropped, and out of his mouth, an ectoplasm formed. And the Archangel Gabriel came out. It was about this big, and he was very handsome, and he was wearing this Arab garb, and he had this, like the two black things to hold it on. He just gave this beautiful speech. I can't even remember. I'm just so enthralled with this little miniature ectoplasmic medium. He says, this is the closest I can come to your physical plane at this time, and da-da-da-da. And he gave this great speech about the future. And then it goes back to the guy and goes, and now we'll hear from our beloved master, Saint Germain. And Saint Germain, he floated. You couldn't see his feet. It was just like his upper body, but he was in a robe. His hair was bright orange. He had a kind of a beard and a mustache, and he gave a rousing speech about the future and prosperity and abundance on the planet. And then he said, so that you may recognize the signs of the prosperity. He opened his mouth, and his eyes, and diamonds, rubies, and emeralds and giant things came out and spilled out on the floor. And I was watching this like this, and I looked over to the guy, and he was like this, looking at me, and I just said, this is some amazing stuff. And he said, you know, I've been here all weekend, and you're the only person that's really watched that video. Because there's thousands of people, but, you know, there's usually like a guy back there, a Japanese guy, garlic, and, you know, and people just don't really look at the videos. But this one, I was just amazed. And I asked someone who was in the Summit Lighthouse later, and they said, oh, I've heard of that video. You have to be high up. And I don't know what their hierarchy was, but it really let me understand, because I saw in real person this floating aspect of him. It wasn't like he was walking. It's like he floated, kind of a higher dimensional thing. So I believe Saint Germain is real. I believe it's positive, and I believe that those messages are real. And at some point, we'll see something very tangible and physical take place. And it may be this year, maybe next year, but changes are coming, folks. So if you're sitting there doing your normal thing, join Louisa, join Winston in the service, and get to work on your mission, whatever it is, and be prepared.
That's great, Rob. I think there's lots of signs. Winston, what do you think? That there's major changes coming, imminent.
Well, yeah, changes are coming. It's obvious. I've seen that video. It was on the internet. Yeah, I saw it some years ago. I found it on the internet and never found it since. If you haven't referenced that, I'd like to watch it again.
No, you two tell me. I think it was probably put on the internet for you and taken off a second later.
It could have been. But yeah, I did see that. Very impressive, to say the least. What was being depicted there was, okay, it depends on what direction you are when you see those kinds of things. And that was, he was showing how easy it is to create those valuable gems and all those kind of things. But again, it depends on what your point of view is how you receive that. Yeah, the Saint Germain Trust is real. It'll have probably, I expect that it'll have something to do with Nasara more than anything else. Some of these other things are actually coming from the heritage funds and things that have been prepared since, Bretton Woods and all those kind of things right there. Well, one of the things, that I have realized, just watching the various things that have unfolded, it is in fact that most of the changes will be consumer driven. And that is the, different things you talked about as far as transportation, all these kind of things. They'll be consumer driven out of necessity. And that's how we'll get rid of gas and oil and all those kind of things, is because the consumers will simply say, we prefer this. And so that's actually, I think, how all those changes will come.
I think you're right, Winston, because I have been hearing more commercials for vegan prepared, vegan food, and that can only happen when the consumer, in like the supermarket and like regular commercial advertising. And I was surprised, and I said, that's consumer driven. They know that people are wanting this, and they don't really care as long as they're making money on it, but they always follow the trends. You're absolutely right.
I think one of the things that's going to happen in regards to food is, first of all of the food companies that are controlled by, let's call them dark agenda companies that allow the unhealthy foods and the denatured foods and the genetically altered foods and the chemically sprayed foods, that will come to an immediate halt. And food will go more to a local agrarian type thing where we'll take out, let's say we have a giant building called AT&T, and we just hollow that thing out and we turn it into a big hydroponic garden that, the first, there's 7 floors a day go out and feed, people. So there's these giant hydroponic gardens that will be grown locally that will not be genetically altered, that everyone can have good, healthy food coming to their table every day. And you don't have to buy stuff in boxes that's got, preservatives in them. This is one of the things that will take place in the future. I'd like to go back to the trip a little bit if I could here. So, when you go with Louis on these trips, you go into these meditations, and what he calls the masters and the guides of the sky, they both have spaceships, will appear and kind of energetically charge the group individuals. I'm going to share with your people here now on a share screen real quick. One of the things I have here let's see. Select a window that I want to share. Okay, this one here. So,
you have to
share screen.
Okay, you got it. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go back here. This is my conference this summer, but I want to go back real quick to Louis' conference here, and this is on my website, thepromiserevealed.com. You can actually go here and let me see here. I'm trying to. Okay, well, let's just talk about this conference.
What you have to do is go take it off screen share, and then go back to the window that you want. You have to pull that window up first, and then go on screen share, and then select it.
So anyway, let's
talk about this.
I'll share this window. So this summer, I'm having my 5th annual summer conference, and it's entitled "From Venus with Love," and we're going to have Omnek, the woman from Venus, and maybe I can get her to come on your show. If you like, but she's the woman who came from Venus, and as you go through this invitation here, you'll see it. We have Scott Warner, who you guys are familiar with, and then we have the Ethereal Society, which was a contactee from Venus named Sir George King, who did a lot of yoga and had created a series of missions and activations, acting as a transducer for the cosmic rays of the masters on various mountaintops and other things. They have a technology of pyramids and crystals where people do prayers that stores energy, and then they go to various locations around the planet and release them. They have Project Starlight, Sunlight. I'm not familiar with everything, but we're going to have one of their main speakers. We have a lady who's worked with the Barbara Handcloud, the Pleiadian Shari Lynn, and then, of course, Louis will be there. And this new guy, Raymond Keller, is an amazing character. He has been working with, I've done some radio shows, and you can see those on The Promise Revealed. I've got part 1 and 2. And tomorrow, actually, he and I are interviewing Omnek together, and we're going to be uncovering information. But Raymond actually has uncovered some information in regards to George Adamski. George Adamski actually lived in Laguna Beach, and Fred Bell lived in his house before I met him. That was where Fred had his very first contact with Semyasi. He was living in that house. He said the spaceship came into the canyon, and a woman opened the door and stood there in a spaceship and had telepathic communication. He goes, "Who are you?" And she goes, "You'll hear about me, my name, and who I am from a foreign land." And some years later, he began his contacts with Semyasi around the time that I met him at around 16. That's a long history there. But Raymond Keller was hanging out with Howard Menger and Connie Menger, the incident at High Bridge, New Jersey, and he has been involved in UFO groups. He's lived in 44 countries. He's a professor. He has, he's got all kinds of like titles behind his name. A strong intellectual guy, really kind, and had some amazing experiences. So I'm going to share one with you. He met this woman back. When did he first meet her? Oh, he met her through Gabriel Green. My buddy from Yucca Valley, who was the James Gilliland kind of on steroids. You go meet him. He had much smaller things, but he had space people in and out of his house and introducing people. And Raymond Keller went to his place in 1986, I guess. It's around the time I had my first contact up there with him. And he introduced this guy to a lady that she's changed her name, Denise Barrios. So Denise Barrios was born in 1385 in the Basque region of Spain. Her family put her into a covenant, and I think she was 13 or 14, and she was running away, and she was trying to find her aunt in Bilbao, who she felt would be sympathetic to her leaving the church. And these are the kind of the prime days of the Inquisition or whatever, right? So she was in a barn seeking a night's sleep, and an angel appeared to her, a messenger, and gave her the gift of immortality. And so she made her way, she dressed as a man frequently and made her way to South America, where she worked in the missions down there, doing the best she could to stave off the slaughter and to act as a light worker. She, every 20 years, she would change her name and her clothes, and sometimes whether she was a man or a woman. And I guess it was Pope Urban in one of these times there that some conquistador found out that she was a woman and tried to rape her, and she ended up killing him to protect her own life. And she found sanctuary in a church. And finally, it was negotiated she get free passage back to the Pope. And she had told this story of her visitation to a very high bishop who was even in a higher position now and was close to the Pope. So when she returned, he had told her about this girl, and the Pope said, it's better to believe you than to deny your mystical experience and reap the karma. So he absolved her, gave her, absolved her of the murder and all that. A lot of the inquisitor type priests didn't like it, but she came back to the Americas and she continued her mission. And much of her mission was she would go around, and when women were being abused by the conquistadors, she would come in. She had a cadre of and they'd come in and just, take out the bad guys and save the women, kind of like I guess you would call it, what's his name? Hi-Ho Silver. What was that guy's name?
Lone Ranger.
Like the Lone Ranger, she'd be coming in and saving the women. So this guy meets her in 1986, and they have some experiences. She talks about her experiences and what she had done. I'm not through. He's written 3 books, one called Venus Rising and Rockets to Venus and Ray's Excellent Adventure. But I can't, it's amazing, his stories. And what happened was he's had a series of contacts with her. And it culminated in one. But first I want to tell you about Annalise Scarron, the woman from the Mormon Church, who he also had an experience with. Now, Annalise Scarron was a woman from the Mormon Church, a very sacred, special, holy girl that was telling the truth about Divine Mother that came from the original teachings of the Mormon Church that has been pretty much corrupted in many ways. Not that there aren't wonderful, loving people there, but we try to tell these things, and the church elders and the state president and the bishops, whatever, condemned her, excommunicated her. She continued her teaching through a pastor in the Mormon church. She kind of broke off into its own thing and was well received. And at the end of her life, she went back to the pastor who she had left for 20 years, and she was being translated. Her teeth were kind of old. She was 83. Want to say something?
Yeah, if you want to just take it off screen share while you're talking, this way people can see your face, because we're not sure what we're looking at. And if you wanted to, just talk for a little while, you can put it back on screen share. But we want to see you when you're talking.
Yeah, let's see.
If you don't mind.
I'm going to do stop share. Okay.
Yeah.
So
thanks.
So anyway, Annalise Guerin was translated. She looked younger. She had all of her teeth, and she appeared to the pastor, and he called it, Raymond calls it translation. It's not ascension. And a sphere, and the sphere being type energies are well known. Corey's not the first person, and it's not new. But these spheres appeared, and she translated and went to Venus. Now, let's fast forward to 1986. Raymond is very much in touch with the pulse of different things, and teachers come before him. And there was an 87-year-old guy from Mount Shasta in 86 who told him, yeah, I know where the portal is and the masters, and said, come on up and I'll take you there. He took him up to Panther Meadows, and that's the end of the walking. And then there's a hiking trail. He gave him directions, and they went up to Squaw Meadow, and there's a rock and a spring there. And that's the portal. So him and I think 6 women from his group called Osiris. He's had so many groups through the years, but they were there, and all of a sudden this woman in the silver spacesuit appeared. And I should have her name on my tongue, but it was Annalise Guerin who had translated. And the story was that she was on a mission from Venus in the Sirius system and on a planet called, forgive me, but you'll get this later in one of my interviews with him, but I think it's called Balantor. And on this planet are mostly insectoid beings of the hive consciousness energy, and they allowed the Venusians to come and establish an outpost. And she said they were living in these giant log houses, but she said, look up there, and he could see some of these insectoid beings. And she said, well, it's actually kind of a portal. You're actually looking back at Sirius. It looks like they're on the mountain, but because we're in a portal vortex here, you're actually looking into the portal that I've come from. So she spent 3 hours talking with the group, and they said, can we take a picture? And like a lot of these ETs, they said, yeah, but don't take a flash. So they all took a picture, but when they developed it, she wasn't there. But they had this experience with her. So now, fast forward, let's go to 2012. He's had experiences with Denise Barrios, this extraterrestrial who's 1,300. I mean, she's 600 or 700 years old in Earth terms. In 1946, she was taken back to Venus for training for 12 years to come to Earth. And she actually is the being George Adamski contacted, called Orthon. And she told them, tell the people that I'm a man, because in 1952 or 3 or whenever it was, people wouldn't believe that a woman could be there. But George Adamski had many other psychic spiritual experiences. He's in metaphysical societies. There are other people that were having telepathic communication with the Venusians, including on the day that he landed. Meade Lane and a guy named Mark Probert were in Vista, California, and the spaceship that landed for Adamski came over them. This is not a German secret space program, as Michael Salla intends to purport. This is the real deal. They had on their feet not swastikas, but a similar kind of spiral thing that represents life on there. But she was wearing a silver spacesuit, had long hair, and has kind of androgynous, although she's a female, had a masculine look. And she told him, "Tell him I'm men." The guy George Hunt Williamson, who took pictures of her and drew pictures of her and saw her, she had this little ball, and this is called a nimbus, and this is a security system that when she was appearing in the early 50s, she would go to space conventions and she always had a ball. There's always if you see these pictures of her, she has a little ball in her hand. So if the people, freak out about her, she can actually just disappear in a flash of light. And there's some great stories in his books, and you can check them out. But I want to get to this great story. In 2012, he's in China. And he's looking around, and there's a bar that says the Bee Bar. And the bees are very important on Venus. And he went in there, and Denise Barrios comes in. And he goes, "Hey, Raymond, how are you?" "Oh," he said, "I'm so happy to see her." And she goes, "I'd like to invite you to an ascension party." And he goes, "Okay." And so they chatted, and I think he went home, and the next day he was all dressed and ready to go. And she said, "Let's go up to your roof." And they went up to the roof, and there's a little sphere, and she pulled him up, and they started to travel, and he was a little cold, and she adjusted the temperature, and so they're going in this blue sphere together, and they're arriving on the Tibetan plateau, and there's 2 lakes there. They call one, this is new information, I forget the name, but one is called the Lake of Heaven, and the other one is the Lake of Demons, because there was a battle there in ancient times. And so he gets there, and he sees landing around the lake on the sand all these other spheres. So, he doesn't know where he's going at this point. And so there's a tent, and they walk over to the Tibetan tent with prayer flags and everything, and out walks the lady, Annalise Scarron, the Mormon saint woman, who is translated to Venus some 20 or 30 years ago, he met on the Mount Shasta, was working. Now she's on the earth in a physical, and she greets him. And so about 4,500, he estimated, orbs appeared with people from the earth and Venusians. And I asked, "Did you get to go?" She goes, "No, I didn't go to that." But they get down, and there's a giant, long, cigar-shaped mothership and Valiant Thor's Victor 1 ship. He goes, and there was the Victor 1 ship. And I go, "You mean not front?" He goes, "Yeah, he was there in the other ship." And so all the people got on board these 2 ships. He says as they took off, there was a huge avalanche. There's no one there, but the magnetic fields are from both these Valiant Shore ships 100 yards across. It wasn't big compared to the mother-shaped cigar ship. But they took off, and they went to Moon first to show them the Venusian base, which they call Clarion, briefly, just to look at it. Then they went to Venus. And in the higher, in the higher aspects of the longitude, there's some atmosphere there. There's many different life forms and many different dimensions. But he said they landed on the continent Aphrodite. In the city of Azure, there's something called the Zither Dome. And he landed there, and they were having this huge celebration for the Queen of Venus. And they replaced the queen every 5 years, but this woman had been there many times for many successive generations. So these beings came down from the higher dimensions, and he said they appeared with these energetic wings. He said they looked like wings, but they were like etheric things. And as they landed in the physical, the wings disappeared, and they took their 13 seats. And they each gave a rousing speech about the beauty of her life. And a hologram was played so that everyone was able to see these experiences of her life. And they gave a rousing applause. And she was, kind of bespeckled in jewels. And she came and she went into an open-petaled red lotus sphere, which closed up. And she ascended to what they call the colobe, or the central sun. And they said, the queen is gone. And the lady that took over was Queen Orda, Denise Barrios. And her story was one of her first incarnations in the 1100th century was she was matriarchal head of a Mongolian horse tribe called the Ordan. Her name was Orda. And so she's had a lot of experience on Earth, and she is now the queen of Queen Bee of Venus, so to speak. So Raymond has an intimate connection to her, and these books just have come out. They're fantastic, and they're on my radio show. You can hear them.
That's wonderful. Who else is going to be at your conference, Rob?
Well, let's see. We'll go back to screen share real quick. Thanks for
Let me just ask Winston, did you have any questions on anything thus far, Winston?
Yeah, he used the word there, kolob. Do you know what that means?
I'm not sure. I think it's a universal language, probably meaning the center of the galaxy, probably. What is it?
Yeah, you'll find that word used in a translation of some scrolls by Joseph Smith Jr., the founder of the Mormon, what people call the Mormon Church. Anyway, that word is very prominent there, and you referred to it as a central sun. Anyway, if people want to research that particular word and some of the things about it, you'll have to look in a book called The Pearl of Great Price in the book of Abraham, which was a translation of some scrolls that Joseph Smith Jr. obtained when he got the sarcophagus of Pharaoh Necho II of Egypt.
Yes.
Well, I'm just interested you use that word.
Well, Raymond's a scholar in ancient history, and he had mentioned that as well. I'm going to see. Can you see the screen now? I'm going to push the button.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, here we go. So we're also going to have Major George Filer, who talks about his experiences in the military, and he has something called the Filer Files. He's the biggest name in the MUFON network. And, of course, Frank Chile, my friend who knew Gabriel Grin, has had numerous contacts. He's the person that introduced William Tompkins to the world. William said he was ready to come out. Frank has many, many contacts within the military and within the world elite contactee networks in finance and other areas that are never going to come forward. They're deeply involved in the missions of interplanetary cultural exchange and for a smooth transition to a new society. And of course, everyone knows Sheldon Neidl, the old friend of mine from here in Mount Shasta of 24 years ago or so. We met, I think we met in 94. So, yeah, 23, 94, whatever that is. Oh my God, get back over there. So, yeah, I don't know how I lost that. There it is. So George Filer and Sheldon Neidl will be there. He's going to be sharing his thing with his lovely sweetheart, Colleen. We're anticipating him to be very well. George Filer also recently had a little health scare with some veins and arteries. He's back on. And then we have Ralph and Marcia Ring, the sweet couple that James Gilliland witnessed the spaceship that Ralph had built with the ETs back in the day down in the desert when James was 14 years old. He had seen the spaceship land on one of the things. And these are wonderful people. They're working directly with extraterrestrials. They're actually down in Ecuador right now hanging out with my old friend of Fred's, Pat Flanagan, who I've known on and off through the years. And then my friend Shambhala will be the MC. And we have a couple other special guests. I'm going to have musical guests there. But this is on the first page of my website. You just click on this link here, and you're going to see this. And then you click on it, you can go there. I wanted to share also, we have a fair amount of people already, but the second thing is this initiation situation with Louis. We're going to see this picture here. This is actually a real picture, not photoshopped. It's at the salt flats in Bolivia. And he says it's so clear, the sky and the spaceships like to appear there. There's an ancient site beneath the salt flats. So we actually travel to where the ancient ruin is of the Galactic Federation, and we'll go to that place. And then you see this picture. This is the highest volcano in the world, called Sahama. And Louis was guided there in 2012. I think I mentioned that the largest Sintamani in the world. And this is all information on Louis. You can see his videos and people talking about, I'll show you the video right here. This particular video, is it right here? Yeah. If you want to watch this video, there's an underwater UFO at Lake Titicaca there, but watch this video. When they were at this volcano, I'll show you a picture from, this is one of the pictures of the sightings in the daytime, and this is where these ships appeared for our group during one of our meditations. And it's kind of cool. I mean, the lights in the sky are okay, but it's really about the energetic information. Oh, and when we go down to the salt flats, we're staying in a hotel made of salt. We still have some places open, and we're leaving on the 23rd. But I want to show you this one picture of the volcano, which is the highest volcano in the world. They transferred the giant Sintamani stone that came from Sirius and the higher dimensions. They tried to lower it in the physical. This is that's the island of the sun. That's our boat down below. That's one of our groups in 15. But that volcano here, see this picture here? I don't know if you can see the lines coming off.
Yeah, you can see it.
According to Luis and according to Cobra, we're going to talk about these lines in particular, but these lines actually are leading to various locations that are sacred and that say it.
Are they ley lines?
Yes, ley lines, energetic portals are being restructured through a combination of the cosmic rays hitting the golden disk of the sun and the Sintamani. These are primary tools of bioplasmic restructuring of the planet that's creating new energies and uplifting our vibrations. So that kind of wraps it up for the Bolivia trip. We're going to the salt flats. I've never been there, but we're having 8 days, and we did have lots of contacts, and I'll repost those UFO pictures. But Luis is coming to us, but he's very heartfelt, very loving and warm, and he doesn't go into politics or chemtrails or who's doing what. It's all about energetic attunement. Oh, I should say one more thing that they had mentioned. They said that many people are being contacted in their sleep. So if you have those lucid dreams, you maybe get a little snippet, but they're intended for you not to remember. It's not endanger you, but at the time of the event and when the plasma scalar field things change, these memories will come quick to us so that we can assimilate, remember what we've been taught, and begin to share the information as much as possible. But they're changing our blood. The blood is becoming more crystalline. Eventually, the DNA changes will take place, and you'll be able to see it. But the preparation is the purification of the blood. And there are a lot of energetic things that are blocking us. And I don't want to be negative, but I just was down in LA, and I have to tell you, we had heavy rain, that thing in Santa Barbara that you all heard about, and people dying, and the Hollywood contingent up there losing their millions and millions of dollar homes. And I was watching, the sun finally cleared, and Trail City, baby, they were hammering it. And after the rain, you looked around, and it was like the old days of the smog, except it was kind of white. Wow. I could look across like Orange County or from East LA towards the beach in Santa Monica, and it looked like a fog, but it wasn't. It was just chemtrail. So they are working very hard with this influenza thing, and I'd like to recommend everyone just get your colloidal silver. You don't have to drop it. Drink half a bottle, spend the money, and you can knock that stuff out. So they're still in charge of certain things going forward here, but I would like to encourage people like prepareforchange.net, which I worked on, and I was kind of a founding member. They have a really good program there that was kind of instigated by a guy named Danar, a great idea for the world to communicate in these regional groups. So there's people from around the world. Hundreds of people in different groups are connecting on Skype. And if you want to be involved in that, it's about dissemination of truth, preparing yourself to be a stabilizing, peaceful, calm, communicative person at the time of the event when the rest of the world will get the reality of what we all know, of the negative forces and what's going on, and to realize that there is a divine intervention, that things are moving forward there. So prepareforchange.net, look for some good things there. They're getting ready to launch some of these programs there, and I've been working with them on that. And that good stuff there.
Excuse me. Did you, now, was there some updates in terms of, actually, I think you might want to let our viewers know, for those who are interested in attending your conference, where are they going to get information about where it's located, and maybe lodging and things like that? Is it all on
information? You go to my website, it's the first banner, click on it, and it gives you all the information. And then there's another little thing there that says speakers biographies, and you can read about each speaker and what they're doing. I'm doing a different thing this year. I'm going to have some workshops in the morning. Maybe Winston will be there. It's a ways away, but before the official program, there's going to be other people sharing good information there. We're going to have a good program, some PowerPoints. I mean, Raymond Keller is going to blow us away. I don't know how I didn't know about this guy beforehand, but these books he have are really astounding. His trip to Venus and his experiences with previously not the Queen of Venus, but just became the Queen of Venus. So there's another thing that he shared with me, that there are, like many other planets in our solar system, in other out of frequency in other dimensions. Not the spheres that like became visible, but many worlds with other life that we would affect through our misuse of hydrogen or nuclear bombs, which they consider a very bad thing and a big part of their efforts. They have repelled a Saurian invasion back in the times of Greece. The reptilians came down and they were repulsing them through battles in the sky that might have been seen and actually recorded. And one of the lady named Victoria from Venus, who was the head of one of these starships in charge of repelling the Saurians that had come into the Earth, like we hear from the 96 Congo invasion and these deep underground bases that Corey and stuff is saying is being cleared now, is the head of the Greek thing. They considered them gods. So they were like, they made a statue of her, Queen Victoria. So she came down and landed and said, I really don't appreciate you putting me as a statue, and your generals, considering me the goddess who gives victory to you in war. Destroy the statue. Don't worship me. Worship God. And gave them kind of an ethical lesson, but the generals were very sad. No, you've been responsible for. They claim that she's responsible, but it's time all wars end, and so we'll understand the true history. But her name was Victoria, and that's Commander Valiant Thor's ship is named after her, Victor 1, and Valiant Thor has been in charge of the mission. Another thing you should know, which I've known for a long time. And I should have the poster out ready for you, but Frank Strange's many years ago went on board this giant starship that is actually, it's shaped kind of like a car. It's got two things in the front. It comes down kind of like a Formula One car, and then it goes back, and it's a big thing, and it's got wheels on the back. He said it's 14 miles long, 7 miles wide, and 5 miles high. You may have seen it It's matte black. It's called the Dark Knight. It sits 100 miles above the Earth. It's cloaked, and nobody's touching that baby. The technology is too high, but that's where they run a lot of their operations from. And Dr. Frank, it's not one of it's kind of a good story, actually, but Dr. Frank had, he's an immigration judge. He was a pastor of the police departments. He had a lot of efforts. He was a Secret Service agent in the 50s, not protecting the president, but going against the counterfeiters. And so he had access to the military and stuff. And of course, Lyndon Johnson, Bobby Kennedy contacted him in regards to Valiant Thor. But some local guy said, hey, I want you to come down to Mexico and do this and that. And they were kind of using him as a cover. They had a private plane. They flew down to Mexico. And the guy stuffed a bunch of marijuana in the back. Dr. Frank had no idea what was going on.
Oh, gee. Did he get
set up? Arrested and tried and convicted, and I think they put him in jail for 8 months.
Wow.
And guess what happened? Valiant Thor, and they just have ways of just appearing and doing whatever they want. But they bought a guy who was probably created through the technology that was an exact replica of Frank. And Valiant Thor walked him out through the guards and just like opened the gate, and they just walked out of prison, and the other guy walked in, and no one, I mean, I don't know how they did it, but he went in there, and Dr. Frank got to go live aboard this spaceship for several months.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
So the negative experience was turned into a beautiful spiritual boon, where Dr. Frank got to meet many of the Confederation and the Red Russians. The Venusians are very active, and I was thinking, what am I going to call this conference? And Louis and Raymond is from Venus with Love, folks. So we invite you to come up. All the links are there. I have some special prices, blah, blah, blah. But you guys can sign up. There are some free tickets available. And if people want to come, I recommend you go there and check it out. And we're looking forward to a great time this year. It's really going to be special.
Well, this sounds really wonderful. Really, really does. What do you think, Winston?
Thoughts?
Thoughts? Well, hold on. I'll get back to Winston in just a minute. Winston's munching on some chocolate.
I want Winston's son up there. His son looks like a special forces guy. Winston's son is like I want him just around. He didn't even have to do anything. He just say security, and everyone will see who he is, and there'll be no trouble.
Well, it sounds really wonderful, Rob. It really does. And this is a special time. As you said, there's a lot of special things, according to many different people, in the community who are saying this is the year really for change. And of course, Winston and I have talked about this. Winston talked on our country roads about how the Mayan calendar was actually off by 5 years. So the 2012 event really wasn't happening in 2012. It happened in 2017 on December 21st. And so this year, this is it. And do you think the event, do you have any, you said you might want to make some comments on some of Cobra's recent posts. Do you have any idea on what's your best guess? I know this is just conjecture, but what's your best guess in terms of when you think the event will be rolling out?
Well, first I'd like to say about Cobra, I love him. I think he's got wonderful intel. He certainly knows more than me and has a lot more intimate connection there. There's like this guy out recently attacking Cobra in a video. It's just ridiculous. Some guy, Cobra is this and that. It's just so much negativity going around, attacking people, and it's just ridiculous. But Cobra has come out with some very interesting update in regards to the clearing of the sublunar space in regards to these kind of interdimensional beings that are hiding in temporal fields within the earth and the caverns that Corey has also corroborated. And there's operations ongoing to remove these top lip bonds. And I've said before, I believe they probably do have to be removed at some point, but I believe the higher dimensionals are in charge, and there's an ability for them to go back in time and correct anything. I heard that Cobra said that the Hawaiian bomb thing was real. I know there are some major government bases, because Maui is the biggest space command center on the planet for monitoring extraterrestrial entrance into our atmosphere. So they watch them and track them very closely from Maui. And beneath Maui, there's a huge military base, and it's next to Kauai, and there's some deep secret space programs there. Whether the Cabal, and there's some submarine bases, and whether the Cabal was launching from there or near there, there's also some very ancient Lemurian-aged Confederation bases as well. So there's a woman who took pictures, and you could see it was like a diamond. I think she took pictures above Hawaii at the time of the and you can see some like etheric spaceships looking like advanced ultra-dimensionals, more than like Palladians and stuff. But Cobra,
diamond head.
Yeah, the diamond head, baby. Yeah, diamond shaped above diamond head.
Yeah.
Did you? I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask Winston if you had wanted to comment on.
No, I'm just interested to hear all the stories here. In conjunction with what happened to Hawaii, also apparently, I was reading on the internet today that they also had that same kind of event at Japan, which again was forwarded by the Alliance, or whoever they call themselves, and then apparently they took out another one of those submarines. So it looks like these fools would stop doing that because they're losing all the assets they have. I mean, you know, fool me once, shame on me. You know, these guys just keep doing the same stupid things all the time with the same results. You know, when they're going to finally figure out if they don't stop it, they're going to lose everything they got.
Well, psychopaths don't. You can't reason with them, you know.
And they don't lose anything. They send minions out, like these military guys, and who are very brave, well-trained, young, well-intended, and they just get used and abused by the governments that support wars on both sides and secretly collude to create death and destruction in proportions on people. It's very bad. So we want to end the military and people involved in there to not fall prey to the we-they scenario, and to realize that we're all brothers and sisters, and that these situations are manipulated, and that the training that they've had to murder and to use this high technology is destructive, and instead to support positive technology to heal the planet and to move forward. I mean, the people, I have an orphanage in Tanzania I try to help support. I don't ever touch the money. You contact him directly, but you know, they're having trouble with foods right now, and those are the people that really need help. The innocent, I mean, you know, I can complain about my life and you got this and that, you can whine, but the real suffering is a child caught up by some fragment of grenade who's killed their parents, and they have a piece of, you know, something in their arm crying in the middle of the street. This is the horrible, true reality of war and the suffering that's taking place. And I pray for that resolution within the hearts and minds of everyone that's involved in that, to be calm and peaceful and to move out of that. And you know, we got the criminals, so many criminals here. All of them are resigning and, you know, getting sick. And I think we can see behind the scenes that something's happening. How we're going to rise out of the ashes is up to us. The ETs are not going to force anything on us. If we want to be locked into our, you know, religious fervor or our misdirected beliefs of whether they're going to allow that, but it's up to us to rebuild the phoenix step by step, each loving act of kindness at each moment. And we're all interconnected. Our bodies are interconnected. We have a spiritual, a mental, and a physical aspect. And I want to talk a little bit, if I could, about the living flame of God, your own vibrational essence that is your electromagnetic spectrum. It's a multidimensional toroidal field known as the heart wave or the Anu. And you are part of everything. It's simply a fact. We are all reflections of the one. We are divine holographic individual representations. And yet we have our own individual responsibility of who we are. And despite all of the stuff, chemtrails, vaccinations, telephone, cell phone, HARP, all the things that are assaulting us, we have that inner I am presence. And that's is where a lot of my work is going. I'm thinking I'm just going to stand up now for a second and show you. I'm going to send you a link. I recently did some videos here, but there's different sacred geometry technology that that utilizes pyramids and crystals. See, a pyramid is a fire in the middle, and the life force comes in the shape of a pyramid. That's why it's called pyramid. That's why people value diamonds, because diamonds are pyramid shaped. Why do people value gold? Gold's molecular structure is pyramid shaped. Why do the temples have them? Because of the healing vibrations of the sun, solar magnetic energy. So these are the various devices. I'm not going to go into them now, but you can see that we utilize crystals and stuff here. And I actually have a little laser show I could do, but maybe next time. But,
it's wonderful.
Go ahead.
Well, no, Rob. I mean, this is great stuff, and you have such a great heart, and you're always really right on message every time we do a program, and you do your own shows, and you're really doing what you can to bring people together and present information that is helpful to people. I mean, this sounds like a great conference. I don't think people want to miss this. If they can get to this conference, they're going to want to get to this one. From Venus with Love. How can anyone not go to this conference? I'm going to try to be there. I'll try. I'll try. It's kind of
I think I can find a place for you to stay, and I can pick you up at the air cart, and of course you have a free ticket. So if you can manage it, it's only, well, with traveling, it's going to be 5 days. A flight out and then a 3-day conference and a flight back. That's 4, yeah. So maybe you can squeeze.
I hope so, Rob. I'll let you know. Hopefully Winston will be there.
Hopefully. He's been invited every year. I've always told him, you come on out this year. All my speakers are always welcome back as an alumni. And one of the things I've realized that I have been good at is I'm a good scout. And I know who's real, James Gilliland, and, we had Alex Collier, Andrew Basago, Alfred Lambermont Weber, Tricia Cannon, Robert. I've had good speakers through the years. Corey, Laura Eisenhower, Sala. And I choose people who are genuine and have real information. And I think this conference is moving away so much from the conspiracy stuff, which I'm a warrior. And believe me, you give me a division, I've said it many times, I go to Washington, I'm not waiting around. When the President and all Congress is there, I'm surrounding them and cutting them off, and we're going to have trials right there and let everyone come out and expose the seamy underbelly. But I think people can handle full disclosure. I think the Tom DeLonge and all the misdirection of that partial disclosure, and I understand the military's fear of chaos and the fact that they have been involved in drug running and sex slave trafficking and NATO and all the dirty dealings that are going on around the world that we're here are being ended. And I'd like to believe it, but until I see the perp walk with the Bushes and the Clintons walking in chains, it's going to be hard to really get it. But I believe that the forces of light are doing this in the proper way, and hotheads like myself are kept out of the
I know. I hear you, Rob. I hear you. I was saying the same thing yesterday. Good thing I'm not in charge of any of this.
Oh, yeah. Louisa looks really sweet right now, but I've had her in private conversations, and she's out there like pounding Thor's hammer, and He's a firebrand, and I think she should be a judge on one of these things. 'Cause, she
Yeah, I would have no mercy, though. I think I would have very little to no mercy. I'm afraid. Well, thanks, Rob. Thanks. You're a sweetheart, and you look great, and it's great to see you again. And we're going to wrap this up, but I wanted to ask Winston if he had any, comments or questions that before we wrap this up.
No, I just came on so I could hear. I could have waited until you put it out so I could listen to it again. But no, I was interested to hear all the various stories that Rob had to share because he always has some very good ones. And I was kind of interested. Maybe at some time you can hook me up with this Keller fella. I'd like to go over some of the information about Kolob and some of that stuff. One of the things I've kind of kept in the closet because I don't want to get people the wrong impressions. But this Book of Abraham, Necho II was a pharaoh that protected Jeremiah the prophet before he left and went to Ireland. Anyway, these parchments were obtained and translated, and from that there was actually developed a Egyptian alphabet and grammar, which I have copies of, and so I might share those with some of these ones because I'm not much into linguistics and all that kind of thing. I just collected some of these things all the time, so he might be interested to see some of that.
I bet he would.
He might be interested to take a look at the Book of Abraham because there are certain facsimiles there. And I'm not smart enough to discern those things, but he might be able to.
Well, I'll tell you, in his books, I've kind of been skimming him. He's got 3 books, and I've been reading them. The stories have opened my mind up with, the insectoid beings and their kind of hive mind. And he explained that they're very positive, the mantis. Some of them did get taken over and used by the Greys, kind of like by the reptilian group we call the Syndicate and all the negative forces. And these are just basically beings who are violating God's law and are using humanity as a resource and keeping us in ignorance. And all the details of that, aside from the religious myths and stuff, will be revealed at some point. But he's extremely knowledgeable of that. I wanted to share one last thing here. The information, there's a woman that came out from Romania, and she's been speaking about the Brusigi area found beneath Romania, a giant complex that had 3 entrances and exits. One goes to Egypt, one goes to I forget where they went now, but it's
underground. You mean underground?
Yeah, amazing find, and the Americans kind of threatened the Romanians with financial, economic collapse and possibly a war if they didn't allow them in on this entrance. And they had a psychic go in. Some soldiers died getting in, but there have been some chosen representatives of spiritual nature who are in charge of, who have been allowed to discern the information and find out what's going in there. And there's a huge complex under there. So these ancient repositories are being found now by the military, and some of them are guarded, as Winston knows, like the one in Wyoming that they opened up a little bit to the government back in the 40s, of advanced technology of ancient times that will be brought forward for us, that we can move forward. And people are ready. You're so ready. Yeah. Jobs and creation of anti-gravity cars, and like that guy Scott Rand said, well, the scooter, yeah, you could fly to Mars. You're not going to fly to Mars on a little anti-gravity scooter. But the essence of what he's saying, the technologies and the med beds, which are very exciting to hear about, coming in and being able to stop and reverse aging, are very positive, uplifting things that can give us hope. And I don't want anyone to think it's coming out tomorrow at 2, but there may be development of this and large funds and workforces being able to create this and put literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people around the planet creating these in factories that can be released and given to people for free to cure up illness and to on the physical level, while we emotionally heal and learn the reasons for the imbalances that we've allowed. So I think it's a bright future for us, and I think the divine Word of God living within us, as we listen to that and increase our flame, our threefold flame, and enter into the silence and connect with God on our own terms. You don't need a psychic. You don't need Louis. You certainly don't need me. You may need Winston, but but we all have this.
You don't need the Pope. You need a priest. Yeah, you don't need a priest. Yeah. Well, I think I'm not sure if Winston can confirm this, but I did read reports that the reason some people died entering those Basegi Mountains is because you have to possess a certain frequency to go into these. That's why they're so. It's very secure. It's very high tech, as you're saying, and if you don't possess this frequency, you won't make it in there. And I'm not quite sure. Can you confirm that?
Well, I don't know about that so much, but I did talk to a fellow who'd gone down to Brazil. And he was going to attempt to enter into some of the underground places and so forth. And at the entrance of it, he was met by a very tall, big native man who told him, he said, if your heart is pure, you'll be able to return. As luck would have it, he came back out. So I guess he met the qualifications. But yeah, what you're saying about some of these places, if you don't need to be there, don't go there. Let me put it that way.
If your heart's not pure, your dinner.
Well, bad things might happen.
Okay, that's very good. So, well, look, I have to tell you, it's really been a wonderful time seeing you again, Rob. It's been a pleasure. It was great to see Winston and for joining us and being part of the discussion. So I just want to thank you, and I want to wish you well, and I just want to encourage our viewers to definitely go out there. I may be there. I may not, but I don't know. But I think I would go. If I can, I'll be there. If I can't, I can't. But I certainly will put effort into going. I think it would be really wonderful because I have a very special.
If you come, wear your special glasses. Where are your special glasses at?
Oh, you want?
If you come, wear your special glasses.
Okay, I'm getting. I don't know if the Venusians would appreciate this. You think they like it?
Are you kidding me?
Look at that. Hey, hold on a second. Wait a minute. Wait. Oh, yeah, you got to be a kid at heart here. Hold on. Wait. There we go. Yeah, here we go. No match. No Zeta's a match for me. Okay, good.
That design actually came from Venus.
Did it really? How do you like that? Hey, so look, folks, definitely check out. Thanks, Winston. Definitely check out, Rob's webpage at thepromiserevealed.com. And also, we're going to have the links in the description section for everybody, for our viewers. So we'll be good with that. Rob's going to give me those any additional links that if I don't have. And what did you want to say?
I'm going to give you a link to the Basegi. I'm going to give you the link to the conferences. We still have room. If you're interested in going to Bolivia, it's coming up in April. There's still room. We're just getting ready to launch our group calls and get everyone signed up. And Shasta's going to be great. And I have a lot of great speakers. It's going to be very busy. But Winston, it's who you meet, isn't it? The connections that you make with people there. There's black sheep. You're a black sheep, and everyone comes and goes, oh, my God, I'm not the only black sheep in my family.
Yeah, that's funny.
So, it's a great place to connect.
That's great. Well, thanks for sharing all this with us, Rob. And I know our viewers were waiting for your part 2, so I'm sure they're going to be very excited. And I also wanted to thank our viewers for watching, and also thank you for your kind words in the beginning, Rob. And I think that it is viewer supported, and when viewers can contribute and participate, then we are all doing our part to as light workers or light warriors to my lightsaber to bring this information out, and let's just hold the light, anchor the light, and
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 support those who are doing. You work very hard, Louise. Folks, I mean, every time I talk to her, she's a mother of two, and she has done a tremendous volume of work at her own expense in her own time. And whether it's rewarded financially, I know it's rewarded spiritually. You have a lot of love from people around the world for your sincerity with which you speak to so many people.
thank
And
you, Rob. Thank you.
that.
Well, no, it's, look, we'll get into this another time, but Rob, Rob helped me get my foot in the door. So the Goldfish Report is always welcome to see Rob. Always. We're always a place here. We're always a place here to welcome Rob onto the Goldfish Report. So I really do want to try and get out to your conference, because I know they're really awesome. And as you know, Venus, there's a connection that I have with this that I will talk to you about afterwards. But there's something maybe I might actually have to share with your conference. So I'll talk to you about that later.
I'd love it. Thank you guys so much. It's a pleasure being here.
Okay, well, victory the light, Rob. And thank you, Winston. Thanks, Rob. And this concludes this edition of the Goldfish Report.